Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This is the 5th episode of the story, where trained as a sage, the Kyuubi by his side, and more powerful than ever, Naruto seeks to be known to the world, either by respect or by fear. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel after watching the video. So, let us begin. Anyone home? A voice resounded through Killer Bee's home. Come in. Yujito yelled. She already knew who it was. Soon, a woman walked in. She looked to be around 15 years old. She had straight bowl-cut blonde hair, and she was very well developed. Samui, what brings you here? Yujito asked. I just came to ask Sensei whether he wanted to visit Omoi in the hospital. And you know how he is in the hospital, Samui spoke. Yujito nodded. He knew of Omoi's habit to overanalyze things, to the point where his opinions bordered on ludicrous. Him in the hospital would have him begin to speculate about his chances of somebody forgetting to bring him his medicine, and then they might forget about him, and then he would die, and then the Raikage would cry about his death, and then the Raikage's mighty tears would flood Kyumogakure, and then everyone would drown just because of his mistake on a mission. Needless to say, the situation needed to be resolved. Samui then took in her surroundings. She was in B's living room. It was quite amazing. The floor was covered with many high-quality rugs with intricate designs. The walls were also covered with rugs also. There was a fireplace in the corner of the room, and a mirror hung above it. There was a couch on one side of the room and a table in the center. It was an unorthodox setup, but it worked out very well in the end. Samui noted B, and then for the first time, saw the person who was laying in meditative stance next to B, who was also in meditative stance. He could hardly be a genin. How could he be the Hokage's personal guard? Don't judge on appearances, Samui. I thought that was something B taught you. I saw him fight B, and I realized then, that I would have a slim chance of beating him. She spoke the last part while sighing as if in defeat. Samui's eyes widened even more if possible. So are you saying he's Jounin level, that kid? Yujito responded with a nod and was about to speak again until someone cut her off. Tibeo. We are done, yo. He ain't screaming, ain't no more dreaming. B rapped as if he was conscious the whole time. Samui watched as Naruto's eyes began to awaken. What she saw surprised her. His eyes were an evil shade of red with a slit in them. As Naruto woke up, he surveyed his surroundings. He was still in B's living room with B and Yujito, though one more had arrived. I've met you before, Naruto spoke, and he attempted to stand, but took a few steps to balance himself as his world was spinning. Samui watched Naruto as he steadied himself and looked her in the eye. Samui nodded. Yes, my name is Samui. Naruto nodded. Uzumaki Naruto. I'm sure Yujito has told you about me. Yujito growled at Naruto while he smirked, and Samui nodded. Yes, I've heard about you, Uzumaki-san. Naruto nodded, then spoke to B. Thank you for your assistance, but I must be leaving. His voice was businesslike. I'm sure it's late. It's only 10:50. Tibeo. B rapped. His rapping was starting to get on Naruto's nerves. 10:30 I was supposed to be back by 7:30, well, better get going, Naruto spoke, then closed his eyes. Yujito was confused as to what Naruto was doing. Samui was thinking along the same lines as Yujito. B watched Naruto intently, then in a flash of movement, his eyes flew open. Then, he disappeared. There was no blur, no sign of movement, he just disappeared. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX return. I see you decided to drop in, Naruto, he spoke, all the while still reading his Ika book. Naruto frowned, then spoke, I was gathering information. Kakashi's raised his eyebrow, do share, Naruto smirked, the incident in IWA 2 years ago. Kakashi's eyes widened, then he spoke, I see, so what did you learn? Naruto spoke, I learned nothing, I merely remembered everything I forgot. Kakashi nodded, I see, you released repressed memories. Well, that'll be our little secret. The Hokage was worried about you. He thought you might have gotten into some trouble. I'll explain everything. For now, let's get inside, Naruto spoke. Agreed, Kakashi spoke and crescented one of his patented eye smiles. Then the two turned and walked into the inn. Currently, Naruto was sitting in the Raikage's office with the Hokage. The topic was boring, yet Naruto was still listening to every bit of information, remembering anything that could put Konoha in a bad position. That was when a messenger rolled in. Raikage-sama, the Kazekage has arrived, the messenger spoke. It was the Hokage who responded, Kazekage, I was not informed of this. I meant to tell you, Hokage Dano. My sincerest apologies. I invited the Kazekage and the Tsuchikage to this meeting as well. They both accepted to come, but it seems they are both late. I also invited the Mizukage, but he was busy with internal matters, the Raikage spoke. Internal matters meaning the civil war that threatens to destroy the balance which holds the village together, the Hokage spoke. The Raikage smirked, not one to be behind the bush with your words. Are you Hokage Dano? The Hokage managed a stifled laugh. Not at all, Raikage Dano. I believe you inviting the other Kages was a good choice. Perhaps it may be the beginning of a cross-village alliance. Perhaps Hokage Dano, wouldn't that be something? The Raikage replied. The Hokage nodded in response. Well, let us go and wait on the Kazekage, the Raikage spoke. Very well, the Hokage replied and moved to stand up, but he was stopped as another messenger came in. Raikage Dano. The Tsuchikage has also arrived, the messenger yelled. The Raikage suppressed a look of surprise. Both Kages arrived within the hour of each other? Not even an hour, within minutes. I see. Well, it looks as if we'll be welcoming both Kages then. The Raikage spoke. Indeed, it would seem so, the Hokage replied, and both Kages, followed by their escort/guards, walked out of the room and towards the lobby. Naruto was standing in front of two of the most powerful people of the shinobi world. On the left, dressed in white Hokage garbs with accents of the color blue, was the Kazekage. His face was slightly hidden by the shadows, but from what Naruto could see, he was middle age. He was at that point where he was beginning to show signs of his age. On the left was the Tsuchikage. He was a short man with a rather large nose which was a slight shade of red. His hat covered his head, but there was no sign of any type of hair. He stood with his back slightly crooked, and he was about a little shorter than Naruto, but what intrigued Naruto the most were the bodyguards with each Kage. Each one had 5 bodyguards, much like his team did, but he noticed that in each group, there were many young people. The bodyguards of the Kazekage included 2 jounin, one with a face mask covering his face and right eye. He also had a bandana on, so a tiny space was only visible where his right eye was. The other guard wore goggles which were tinted so his eyes weren't visible. He had a sword on his back. He wore normal shinobi trousers and a black long-sleeve shirt under a jounin vest. It was the other guards with the Kazekage that got Naruto thinking. They were kids. There were 3 of them. One dressed up in what looked like a black cat-like jumpsuit and he wore purple face mask. The female wore a one-piece outfit that was a shirt and a short skirt. She also had a red sash around her waist in which a giant battle fan was held. The last of the guards for the Kazekage was a boy with red hair. He had green eyes but strangely no eyebrows. He had a black lining around his eyes, signs of an insomniac. He also had the kanji for love tattooed on his forehead. Naruto sensed that there was also something different about him. Naruto looked over to the Tsuchikage's guards and noted them all. He recognized them all. They were the ones from the memory of the incident in IWA. There was Zensuke, Rei, Sanako, Kira, and the last one was Kyo, the one that had confronted him when he entered IWA. Naruto's eyes widened as he noticed them. He soon met the gaze of the one he remembered by Zensuke. They stared at each other for the moment, none letting the other tear them down, then they broke their gaze. Welcome, Tsuchikage Dano, Kazekage Dano. I am glad you could join Hokage Dano and I, the Raikage spoke. It was the Kazekage that spoke. Yes, well, it would seem that the situation calls for it, would it not? As he spoke this, he turned to the Tsuchikage. I mean, after the incident, the Tsuchikage looked right back at the Kazekage. The incident. Funny thing is that our village is still stronger than yours. Even after the incident, the only reason you're here is to secure a deal with the other villages because you know that your village will be crushed if war were to break out. The two Kages met each other's gaze and Naruto observed the whole scene. He calculated in his mind. The Tsuchikage had a point. Ever since the end of the Third Great Shinobi War, the Wind Daimyo had preferred to offer contracts to ninja of Konoha, meaning Konoha stole some of the income which Suna would have received. And with that lack of money, exports and imports of goods was severely deterred to the point that some parts of Suna are on the edge of starvation. Naruto watched as the girl with the fan tensed and moved her hand towards her fan. Zensuke began to do the same, fashioning a sword that Naruto remembered he did not have the last time. There will be no need for mindless bickering, Kazekage Dano, Tsuchikage Dano. The reason we are here is to discuss of a possible union. We should not be against each other before we talk of coming together, would you not agree, Kazekage Dano? The Kazekage broke his gaze and turned to the Raikage. I would agree that under the circumstances, you are correct, it would be best for all of us at this time to get along, and what do you say? Tsuchikage Dano would also agree. So then, what of this treaty? Are we going to begin? The Tsuchikage asked. Well now, the Raikage spoke, I'm holding a banquet dinner at 8 o'clock tonight. I had planned it for tomorrow as I had not anticipated the arrival of the Kazekage this early. But it still works out, the Tsuchikage grunted, then spoke, well then, I guess I'll be off to my inn, as will I, Raikage Dano. The Kazekage spoke. Indeed, you might as well leave also and be ready for tonight, Hokage Dano. I'm sure our dinner will break any tension between we Kages. The Raikage spoke with a smile that seemed more like a taunting smirk than an actual smile. Alright, then I will bid you goodbye until later, Raikage Dano. The Hokage spoke, then gestured to Naruto, and they both left. Sensei, did you see him? Zensuke spoke. Yes, there was something about that boy with the Hokage, Kira responded. Rei and Sanako just stared at their teammate and Sensei, not realizing what they were talking about. The Tsuchikage cut into their conversation. During meetings like this, we Kages are usually allowed 1 or 2 guards into the meeting with us. Since the Raikage only had one, the woman that was next to him, then I suppose that the boy was tasked to guard the Hokage personally. Rei's eyes widened. That kid. He's barely our age. How could a Kage trust his personal safety to dash? Kages are smart, the Tsuchikage spoke, cutting off Rei. If that boy was chosen to be the Hokage's personal guard, you can bet there was a reason behind it. Rei nodded, then calmed down. She was just surprised that the Hokage would trust his life to someone so young. I recognize him from somewhere. The new voice made itself known. Zensuke turned to Sanako, who was the one that spoke. You know him? I'm not sure, he just felt familiar, as if I'd met him from somewhere. Sanako spoke. I felt the same, I don't know from where, but I know I have met him before. Zensuke spoke. Perhaps you are just confusing him with someone who looks like the Yondaime. Kyo spoke. At the sound of the name of the 4th Hokage, the group went silent. He did look like him, Kyo spoke. By this time the group had stopped walking. We don't speak of him so freely, you above any should know this. The Tsuchikage spoke in a quiet tone with underlying anger. Hi. Sorry, Tsuchikage-sama. Kyo responded. But I do agree with you. That boy needs to be watched. Zensuke, I believe you are up to the task. The Tsuchikage spoke. If you believe so, Tsuchikage-sama, then I will complete this task you have set out for me. Zensuke responded in a businesslike tone. Good. Then your mission is to locate the boy and figure out anything and everything about it, but try to in a way that doesn't attract too much unwanted attention. The Tsuchikage spoke. Hai, and with that Zensuke-san shined away. Rei looked at the spot where Zensuke disappeared and then sighed. Then, she turned back and continued walking with the group. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX quietly. I think it was that guy. There was something about him, something like Gaara. I could sense it. The boy who wore the black cat-like suit spoke. Brother, do you think that it will come out? The female spoke. If it does, Temari, I will protect you from it, the boy spoke. Idiot, worry about yourself before me, the female now identified as Temari spoke. I guess it's an older brother thing, the boy spoke, and Temari managed to bring out a smile. Kankuro, that kid though, he's intriguing, Temari spoke. I don't trust him. If he's anything like Gaara, then I don't think I would like him. Kankuro paused, then brought his voice back down to a whisper. I mean, did you see his eyes? Temari nodded. In fact, she had seen his eyes. Cold cerulean blue eyes were devoid of all emotion. It was like he was a lifeless puppet, but even a puppet with no emotion couldn't have eyes so cold. I'll meet up with you guys at the inn. I'm gonna go find him, Temari spoke. No, Temari, he'll be at the banquet tonight. I'm curious about him also, Kankuro spoke. As am I, the Kazekage cut in. It would seem he was chosen personally to guard the Hokage. He must be more than he seems. Temari nodded as the group continued walking. None of them seemed to notice as Gaara began to grin. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX ammo, though he had a target destination. He was heading towards the hospital. He had remembered the blonde woman he had met, her name was Samui, and about her team in the hospital. For some reason, Naruto thought he might be able to get some information from them. Naruto knew he wouldn't be able to get in through the front doors. They wouldn't let a rogue ninja from another village just walk into a village's hospital and see their shinobi that are in intensive care, so Naruto went for the old-fashioned approach, in through the third-story window. As Naruto climbed into the window, he noted that there was nobody in the room. Strange, he had sensed someone in the room, but from the calmness of the chakra he could tell they were probably sleeping, so where were they? Naruto quickly grabbed the hilt of his sword. As he did this, the bandages burst in a display of wind. He then pivoted and turned his blade horizontally and out to block the incoming strike. Naruto took in his attacker. He was dressed in a hospital garb. He was brown-skinned and he had white hair. Naruto and him were now clashed sword against sword. The attacker also had his left arm in a sling and there were bandages covering his face. Bandages were also visible going down his left and right leg. "Who are you?" Naruto asked calmly, still clashed with his attacker. "I should be asking you," the man spoke. Naruto smirked. "Uzumaki Naruto," he spoke, then blurred out of sight. The man's eyes widened as he ducked to avoid a slash which just flew over his head. It cut a few of his hairs off. The man then jumped away and took a stance with his sword. "Why are you here?" he asked. "I meant you no harm, I am merely here to ask you a question," Naruto responded. "And what might it be?" the man spoke. "Are you and your team close to the wreckage?" His assistant specifically reported to the wreckage when your group returned injured from your mission, Naruto spoke. The man's eyes widened. "How did you know that I returned from a miss-dash?" But the man was cut off. "I was tasked with guarding the Hokage during his meeting with the wreckage. Now, answer my question, are your team and the wreckage closely acquainted?" Naruto asked. The man calmed down somewhat then spoke. "He knows the leader of our team well." "You mean Samui?" Naruto asked. The man's eyes went wide again. "How do you know Samui?" he asked. "I met her while talking to your sensei Killer Bee," Naruto spoke. If the man could have been more surprised, he would have. First of all, this man had met the wreckage. He also knew Samui and his sensei, B. What else could he know? "I ask you this," Naruto paused, then spoke. "This treaty meeting, is it just a way to get the Byakugan?" The man's eyes widened and he spoke quickly. "What are you talking about? We resolved this issue years ago. This issue was never resolved. We merely sent you a suitable replacement, one which was expendable." Naruto spoke. with the Hokage and some of his most trusted and strongest jounin in your village, getting the Byakugan would become a much easier feat, wouldn't you agree? The man grit his teeth at this, then spoke, I don't know what Lord Raikage-sama is planning, but I believe it does have to do with the Byakugan, so this whole treaty is a load of bull, eh? Naruto tightened his grip on his sword, then he was gone. Disappear. A whisper of the word disappear was heard as Naruto vanished. A crashing sound was heard as the man was now pinned up against the wall, Naruto holding him against the wall by his throat with his gauntlet. How did he do that? The man thought as he was being held by Naruto. What is your name? Naruto asked. Omoi, Omoi responded. I see. Do not cross my path in the future. Because if I know it is you, I will not spare you. Naruto spoke this and let loose his grip of Omoi's throat. He fell to the ground as Naruto released the grip. Naruto began to turn away back to the window, and once he reached it he spoke, the Raikage's plans will fail, and with that he jumped out of the window. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto was told by the Hokage to be back at the inn by 7:30 so he could escort the Hokage to the banquet. Naruto knew he would be back on time. The information that Naruto had discovered though was intriguing to say the least, but he did not confine it within the Hokage, nor any of the other members of his squad. He decided to handle it on his own. He didn't know how strong the force the Raikage would send would be, but he decided that Kane would be more than up to it. In any sort of battle, Kane would have the advantage. A large disperse of chakra, such as the chakra of the five-tailed beast, would attract Konoha Shinobi, summoning jutsu. Naruto spoke then slammed his hands on the ground. The summoning markings appeared on the grounds, then a puff of smoke erupted. After this, a small toad appeared. Gamakichi, Naruto spoke. Hey boss, got treats, he spoke in a high-pitched voice. It will depend on if the task I'm going to give you is completed to my standards, Naruto spoke back. Always like this boss, it's a turn-off. So what do you want? Gamakichi responded. I need a message delivered. I believe you have met Kane, Naruto spoke. Gamakichi nodded, yeah, I met the guy, good. See that it reached him by sundown. I know not when the enemy will strike, so get this message to him as soon as possible, Naruto spoke as he handed a small scroll to Gamakichi. Sure thing boss, and as Gamakichi said this, he disappeared in a plume of smoke. Naruto stood up after seeing Gamakichi return to the summons realm, then he turned around and spoke. You may show yourself, Zensuke, Naruto spoke. And sure enough a person jumped out of a tree and landed gracefully on the ground. He stood up and faced Naruto. How do you know my name? He asked with a slight snarl. Calm down, we have met before, Naruto spoke. I don't recall meeting you, Zensuke returned with a snarl. Perhaps a fight will make it clear, Naruto spoke. Zensuke smirked, are you sure about that? You seem real confident. Just because you were chosen as your Kage's personal guard doesn't make you all high and mighty. I am merely speaking fact, Zensuke. I was stronger than you then and I am still stronger than you now, and as Naruto spoke this, he put his hand on the hilt of his sword, the bandage wrapped around exploded in an outburst of wind. I will defeat you here. I would like to know your name, since it seems you know mine, Zensuke spoke. Naruto smirked, Uzumaki Naruto. At the name being mentioned, Zensuke clutched his head with his free hand. After a few seconds, he let go. It would seem though as if you are in no condition to dash, but Naruto was cut off. Sorry about that, yes I'm just excited, and with that, Zensuke blurred out of sight and appeared right behind Naruto, his blade in a downward swing. Temari had disobeyed her orders. She just needed to find the blonde guy she had seen with the Hokage. There was something about him, something dangerous, yet something that Temari couldn't stay away from. From what Temari could tell, the boy was just like Gaara, but different. If that was the case, then perhaps he could help Gaara. Temari walked with a brisk pace through the market district of the village, trying everything to find the boy. She decided against finding another one of the Konoha delegates and asking for Naruto, that would only spell trouble in the end. But it would seem that Temari lucked out as she heard distant sound of blades clashing. If she remembered correctly, the blonde boy had a sword on his back, so it was possible that it was him. So Temari rushed to the scene hoping to find the blonde guy and with him perhaps the answer to Gaara's problem. Naruto went into a one-handed handstand with his left hand, then flipped over Zensuk. He landed on the other side of him, then Naruto swung his blade at Zensuk's midsection. Zensuk put his blade in front of him, blocking the strike. He then pushed outward, sending Naruto's arm and blade outward, therefore leaving him exposed and open. Zensuk then swung at Naruto in a downward motion. Naruto saw the attack and blurred out of sight, reappearing behind Zensuk. Naruto brought his blade down on Zensuk just as Zensuk turned. Zensuk though was able to place his blade horizontally over his head to block the downward strike. He then pushed upward, flailing Naruto's blade away. Through that motion, he kneed Naruto in the gut. Naruto coughed and grit his teeth as the impact of the hit sunk in. Then, he blurred out of sight, reappearing a few meters above Zensuk. His sword was high in the air. Kenjutsu, chakra blade he swung and a blade of blue chakra flew out and headed towards Zensuk. Kenjutsu, infinite pulse Zensuk swung and a yellow crescent of chakra was emitted from his blade. Both attacks clashed with each disappearing in the end. As Naruto was landing, Zensuk appeared under him and jumped upward, sword in hand. He swung just as he reached Naruto. Naruto, who was parallel to the ground with his back to the sky, saw the attack and guarded by putting his blade in front of his chest. Zensuk and Naruto's swords clashed in mid-air. Zensuk with unimaginable force was pushing Naruto upward into the sky while locked with their blades. Naruto's eyes widened, then his eyes flashed red. Kenjutsu, demonic lunar fang. As he spoke this, his blade began to glow an eerie black color with a red outline. Zensuk's eyes widened as he felt the condensed chakra in the attack. An explosion occurred as the black chakra expanded in a great outburst, eclipsing both Naruto and Zensuk. Arg, Zensuk thought as he was falling towards the ground. From that height, a direct impact may break a few bones, and Zensuk couldn't allow that. Zensuk threw his sword towards the ground and he watched as the blade stuck into the ground. He righted himself in mid-air and landed on the hilt of the blade. He watched as the figure of Naruto descended and landed gracefully on the ground. Naruto had no scar on him. Zensuk's eyes widened at this. Naruto's attack seemed an area effect, meaning it did damage to a whole area. From what Zensuk saw, Naruto's attack engulfed even Naruto, so how was it that Naruto had yet a scratch, while his shirt at the front was literally nothing more, only burnt and charred remains. He had a large burn running down his chest diagonally from the attack. Then he noticed something, his whole chest wasn't severely burned. The red burn mark seemed to go diagonally across his chest, almost like a sword slash. His eyes widened more. The attack wasn't an area effect, it was just so strong that was its radius. It was an attack like his own infinite pulse, but much stronger. Still think you can win, Zensuk, Naruto spoke. Zensuk looked at the figure of Naruto. He took him in. He wore a black shirt with a red design, and a cloak over it. The cloak, which had features of a vest at the front, was black also and had a hood. The accents of the robe were red, such as the inside of the hood. At the back of the robe was the spiral of Konoha. He also had a gauntlet in his left hand. Right now Naruto's face was covered by the hood, shrouding his face in a veil of shadows, but Zensuk had seen what he looked like at the Raikage Tower, blonde hair and blue eyes, features extremely reminiscent of the fourth Hokage. I'm not done yet, Zensuk spoke, then disappeared from Naruto's sight. Naruto brought his blade to his right and held the hilt high with the blade going downward. He blocked the strike from Zensuk, then Naruto spun. With the force that Zensuk was using to push down on Naruto blade, Zensuk was put off balance and he stepped forward. Naruto completed a full 360 and was now beside Zensuk, his sword in hand. His face was very close to Zensuke's at this point. He whispered, "It's over, Zensuke, Kenjutsu." Wind scythe wind began to pick up around Naruto blade. In a flurry of wind, blood spurted out of Zensuke's chest in a straight line going vertically. It looked as if a sword had slashed down his chest. His eyes widened as he saw the cut. It went very deep and it was a perfect and clean cut. It was almost as if it was done by a medic ninja. "You see, Zensuke, wind is my primary element. It's very useful in situations such as this," Naruto whispered. His face was still right beside Zensuke's. "Oh yeah, I'm not out yet," Zensuke spoke, then blurred. Naruto smirked, then turned around. A few meters away from him was Zensuke. He was on one knee, panting. He held his sword in his right hand as he panted. His head was to the ground. "You really should face your enemy," Naruto spoke in a taunting voice. Zensuke's heavy breathing stopped, and if one could look closely, they would see a smirk foaming on his face. "My eye of intent," he whispered, but Naruto heard this. And the force that followed was one that Naruto remembered very well. It was the one he had felt in his vision, the one that knocked his head backwards. It was even stronger now, and more concentrated. It was truly overwhelming, and it was still just killer intent. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX that radiated off of Zensuke, and frankly, it scared her. It was stronger than the killing intent that Gaara released when IT took over, but what scared her most was that the blonde boy seemed barely fazed by the killing intent, yet he was right in front of Zensuke. Heck, Temari felt like throwing up and she was far off in the trees watching. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX, you impress me, Naruto. You can still stand while this close when my Dojutsu is active, Zensuke spoke. He watched as Naruto looked at him, and he began to grin. Soon, Naruto's grin became maniacal. You think this can faze me? Naruto yelled, all the while laughing. Then he spoke, let me show you the true power of killing intent. Zensuke's eyes widened as Naruto's eyes changed from blue to red. They also had a slit in them. After they changed, something followed. Zensuke doubled over as he felt the killing intent Naruto radiated. His eyes dilated and then went wide. His pupil was spinning in his eye and he started bleeding from his eye. Then, Zensuke fell to his knees. He couldn't handle the killing intent. He looked at his blade, and he was truly contemplating plunging it into his heart. But even through this, Zensuke stood up, his eye a bright purple. He closed his purple eye for a moment, then he opened it in a flash. Zensuke released a killing intent which countered Naruto's own. It wasn't as strong as Naruto's, but at least now he could stand. Impressive, Naruto spoke, but let's see if you can still keep up with me. Then Naruto blurred out of sight and appeared in front of Zensuke. He sliced at his midsection. Zensuke parried the strike, then returned with one of his own. Naruto put his blade in front of him to block the strike, then he pushed outward, taking Zensuke's blade with him. Naruto then went for a strike at Zensuke's head. Zensuke ducked, then jabbed at Naruto's gut. Naruto moved to the right to dodge, then swung downward again at Zensuke. Zensuke spun to the left, all the while dodging Naruto's attack. He then finished the rotation with a slice at Naruto's chest. Naruto blurred out of sight and appeared behind Zensuke, continuing his assault. Zensuke decided to take the offensive. He ran at Naruto and swung his blade. Naruto parried the strike, but Zensuke kept coming. Zensuke swung again and again. Naruto either dodged or parried the strike. Naruto though had had enough. Kenjutsu, chakra blade. Naruto spoke this as he parried one of Zensuke's strikes. A chakra blade was emitted as Zensuke's strike was parried, and its force carried Zensuke away. He grit his teeth at the attack, then swung outward, sending the attack flying away. He then blurred in front of Naruto. He swung downward on Naruto's head. His Dojutsu flared for a moment, but he disregarded it and continued the strike. He charged up chakra in the blade as it descended downward. Kenjutsu, Infinite Pulse. Zensuke missed the impassive look on Naruto's face as his sword glowed yellow, a trademark of his attack. Boom! XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX killing intent, Temari had promptly released the contents of her stomach. She couldn't handle it. In fact, she saw the vision of her own death while under the influence of Naruto's own killing intent. But even through this, she continued to watch the battle. She had thought that Naruto had a huge edge over Zensuke, but Naruto had not dodged the last attack, and it looked powerful. Dust had been picked up and a cloud of debris blocked the view of the battle. She wasn't sure what had happened, but she guessed that Zensuke had somehow came out on top. Oh, how wrong she was. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX center of the field was Naruto and Zensuke. In Naruto's left hand, his gauntlet to be exact, was Zensuke's blade. Naruto's own blade was at his side and he just held Zensuke's. But Naruto himself was different. His whisker marks were a lot thicker and he had an outline of red chakra around him, but what was strange was that the chakra seemed sinister and evil. Naruto spoke, "Zensuke, it would seem you have a long way to go before you can challenge me." Zensuke's eyes were wide at this scene, but he composed himself and spoke in slight anger, "I'm not done yet, I will defeat you." After he spoke this, Naruto sighed, but he did not miss Zensuke's smirk. Slice. Naruto looked down at his gut and saw a sword blade protruding from it. It was a glowing yellow. Naruto noted though that the sword was made completely of chakra. His eyes widened as he took in the blade. Then in a flash, more blades came. They went through right shoulder and left leg. "Arg," Naruto spoke, then coughed blood. It fell onto Zensuke's foot. "Don't underestimate me," Zensuke spoke. Naruto released his grip on Zensuke's blade as he fell to his knees. The chakra swords of Zensuke were still in various places around his body. "Arg," Naruto spoke, a mumbled sound as he struggled to stand, but Zensuke noticed something. Though his face showed he was in pain, it quickly turned into a smirk. Zensuke's eyes widened as his Dojutsu flared, then he spun to the right, just as Naruto popped out of the ground behind him, the end of his blade where Zensuke had just been. Naruto came out of the ground and landed. He wasted no time going after Zensuke. He blurred out of sight and at the same time, the Naruto that Zensuke's chakra blades were in promptly burst into smoke. A shadow clone, Zensuke thought as his Dojutsu flared up yet again, warning him about an attack from all directions. Zensuke's eyes widened as he couldn't comprehend what was going on. Then, he noticed that around him in a pentagon were 5 Narutos. Each Naruto had his sword held up into the air, with one of the Narutos with his sword stuck into the ground. Suddenly, a path of lightning erupted in the ground under Naruto's sword. One path traveled towards Zensuke, while 2 others traveled on the edge of the pentagon around either side. Soon, a pentagon was formed from electricity, and Zensuke was standing in a smaller pentagon in the middle of the large pentagon. Zensuke also found that he couldn't move. His eyes widened more as he struggled to get his feet to move, but to no avail. It was almost as if they were paralyzed. Lightning style, electric ceiling from each point of the pentagon, a surge of lightning travel upward in the direction of the center. All 5 met in the middle of the pentagon, right on top of Zensuke's head. Then, it came. A single lightning bolt was fired from above and made its way down with breakneck pace. Boom, arg. Aya! Zensuke yelled as he was electrocuted. It was an excruciating pain, and he just couldn't handle it. The Naruto that had his sword in the ground stood up and looked straight at Zensuke, his face held no emotion. No happiness, no accomplishment, no anger, nothing. But what Zensuke did notice was that Naruto's eyes were still red. There was just an evilness to Naruto's eyes that Zensuke couldn't describe. He knew he had to do something, but what could he do? He was paralyzed and being electrocuted. Then he noted Naruto. He was gathering lightning chakra in his left hand, but Zensuke noted that the chakra was not blue, nor was it yellow. Those were the two traditional colors of lightning-based chakra, but for some reason, Naruto's own was a violent red. This will herald your end, Naruto spoke in a demonic voice. He bent his leg slightly, preparing to speed toward Zensuke, until a voice came through. Stop it. You'll kill him, a voice yelled. This voice stopped Naruto in his tracks. All was still for a moment. Naruto turned towards the direction of a voice to see a female with blonde hair and 4 ponytails. Her expression backed the power which came with her voice, but Naruto could sense that she was suppressing an emotion while she was facing him. Naruto could also tell that that emotion was fear. Soon, Naruto's pentagon ceiling died away and Zensuke fell to his knees. He was panting hard as smoke rose from his body from all the burns he had just received. Naruto turned his gaze back to Temari and he addressed her. You were with the Kazekage, Naruto spoke normally. His eyes were still red and his left hand was still infused with red lightning. Temari nodded hastily to Naruto's statement. Naruto then spoke again, and just why are you here? I was you see well, she tried to form an answer but one didn't come to her. Naruto sighed, then turned back to Zensuke. He reached into his pocket and threw something at him. Zensuke caught it and looked at it. It's a soldier pill. Your chakra should be more or less gone, my seal is to blame for that. I'm surprised you're still conscious actually, Naruto spoke with a genuine voice. Zensuke looked at Naruto, then at the pill. He was right. At the moment, Zensuke was teetering on the edge of consciousness. Any moment he knew he might collapse. He grit his teeth, then stood up. We will finish this another time, Uzumaki Naruto. He began to walk away from the training ground but he walked slowly and with a limp. It was obvious that he was injured and exhausted. Temari decided to intervene. Do you need help getting back? Zensuke turned to the source of the voice. He looked at Temari, his eyes held slight confusion. Then, he spoke. I am of a different village of you are, yet you offer assistance so readily. Zensuke spoke. Temari spoke quickly, this meeting is about unity between our villages. I guess it's an act of goodwill. Zensuke looked at Temari, then smiled genuinely. He then spoke, I thank you for the offer, but I decline. I will be fine on my own. Temari nodded and Zensuke continued on his way. He was soon out of the training field. After he left, Temari turned to Naruto. What are you? She asked. Naruto furrowed his brow, then responded, what do you mean by that? I mean just what are you? You weren't fazed in the slightest by the massive killing intent that guy produced, and then you countered with one that was almost twice as strong. You caught his blade, and used some bizarre sealing jutsu I have never seen before. And your eyes dash. Naruto's furrowed his brow more, then cut Temari off. My eyes, were they evil? Did you feel as if you were looking into hell? Naruto asked, his voice slightly raised. No, Temari answered calmly, which surprised Naruto. She then continued, they are similar, to the eyes that torment my brother. Naruto's eyes widened at this, then he spoke, so it's true then. That guy with the red hair and the gourd. Temari looked at Naruto, then spoke, he is different. Naruto cut him off, he's a host. Temari's eyes widened, how did you dash, but she was cut off once again. Simple. I'm 1-2, XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX from her own rambles. I hold the Kyubi no Kitsune, the nine-tailed demon fox. Naruto spoke. Wait, the nine-tailed fox? Gaara's demon only has one tail, Temari answered. I see. So you've seen him in a full released form then. Wait, one tail, so he holds Shikaku, the sand spirit? Naruto asked. Temari nodded. Naruto then put his hand under his chin. He was in thought. He stayed like that for a moment, then he spoke, so then you're here for some help. Temari nodded. I need one question answered. Naruto nodded. Ask your question. Why is it that you seem to remain sane when you have a demon in your gut? Temari asked. Naruto was confused by the question. My sanity has always been intact, ever since the moment of my sealing. It was now Temari's eyes who took on a confused tone. But my brother is, Naruto nodded in recognition, then spoke, the only reason I can think of is his seal. Last I heard, Suna wasn't too renowned for sealers. Temari nodded, it was the Kazekage's assistant who sealed Gaara. Naruto nodded, then he began to walk away from the training field. I see. Well then, if that is your only question but Naruto was cut off. Wait. You're not gonna help him. Temari spoke with slight anger. Naruto continued to walk away from the training field. He walked past Temari without saying a word. Once he was past her, he turned and looked at her. There is nothing I can do for him. He has already been sealed. Reconstructing the seal without the key would be disastrous and would most likely result in the Shikaku being released. Adding to the seal could have worse effects, because it seems that the seal that was already put on him was pretty bad in the first place. Naruto spoke. If one looked closely, they would see slight sadness hidden in his eyes, but that was overshadowed by a cold glare. Temari's eyes began to water ever so slightly as she spoke. So there's no hope for him then. I never said that. Do not fret, we will meet again, and perhaps I may be able to help you then. Naruto spoke. Temari had a new brightness in her eyes as she spoke softly. Thank you. I didn't get your name. In truth she had, but she wanted to hear him say it. I believe you did, but I don't know yours. Naruto spoke. Temari's eyes held surprise, but she nonetheless spoke. Temari. Naruto nodded, then continued to walk out of the training field. As he left though, he blurred out of sight. Temari stared at the spot where Naruto had disappeared. He's interesting, Temari thought as she began to leave the training ground. Interesting indeed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX 7:40 and Naruto had not yet returned. It seems he's running late as usual, Kakashi spoke. Right now, the group was in front of the inn with the Hokage, awaiting the arrival of Naruto. Then, Kakashi spoke once again. Well, speak of the devil, Naruto appeared in front of the group. He looked at them all, then spoke. Sorry I'm late, I was lost on the road of life. Kakashi couldn't help but smile at Naruto's use of his own excuse. The Hokage noted the scratches on Naruto's shirt. Naruto, did you get into a fight? Naruto frowned. It wasn't much of a fight, Hokage-sama. The Hokage nodded. Will it compromise the mission? No, Hokage-sama. I don't believe it will, Naruto spoke. Very well, then we should be off, the Hokage spoke. Naruto nodded as the Akumo shinobi who was tasked to escorting the Konoha group led them away to the direction of the banquet hall. Kane was being extra careful. He was outside the Hyuga compound. He had received word earlier from Naruto that an attempt to capture the Byakugan would soon take place. Naruto had not said the exact time, but he had tasked Kane with the job of looking after Hayashi Hyuga's two daughters, Hinata and Hanabi. It was around 7:50 and Kane was going to start his patrol at 8 o'clock. He had no idea the layout of the Hyuga compound, but he was sure he would still be able to succeed. Welcome, Hokage Dano. It would seem you are the first to arrive, the Raikage spoke. Naruto took in the banquet hall. It was huge with porcelain floors, walls, and ceiling. Gigantic chandeliers hung from the ceiling and it seemed as if the space itself glowed. There were 2 tables. One was in the shape of a perfect square and on each side was a large chair. Each chair had the insignia of a village. There was Iwa, Kumo, Konoha, and Suna. The other table was a long rectangular one. It had 20 chairs exactly. Naruto calculated in his mind and figured out that each chair was for one of the guards of each Kage. It would seem so, Raikage Dano. The Hokage replied. Then the Raikage spoke again. Please, you may take your seat and your escorts may make their way to that table. The Hokage nodded and motioned for his escorts to go towards the table. Genma nodded and motioned for the others to follow as they went to sit down. The Raikage and the Hokage sat in their respective chairs and began to talk. "So where's the food?" Asuma asked, a sly grin on his face. Genma just shook his head. "Remember guys, we're still on a mission to guard the Hokage. Don't let your guard down." Naruto nodded at this, then spoke. "Genma is correct, potential threats usually have a strange way of popping up, wouldn't you agree, Kakashi-san?" Kakashi nodded to Naruto's answer, but did not venture to why he called him Kakashi-san instead of Kakashi-sensei. Naruto then spoke again. "It would seem that the Kazekage has arrived." Guy looked toward the door and sure enough, the Kazekage along with his 5 guards walked in. Naruto saw Temari and Temari looked at Naruto. They met each other's gaze for a moment before she turned her attention back to the now standing Raikage. The Raikage moved to address the Kazekage. Naruto looked back at his team, then smirked. "It would seem this night will be interesting." Kakashi and Asuma both nodded at that. Genma looked at Naruto curiously but then nodded. That was when Guy stood up and spoke. "Wosh. If this night is not youthful, I will do 50,000 laps around Kumo." Guy exclaimed. Naruto shook his head at Guy's antics, then looked behind him to see the Suna escorts coming his way. He turned his head back at his team, then spoke. "Look alive," he said with a grin. Uchiha Sasuke was walking through the streets of Konoha. As he walked by civilians, he could hear their whispers of admiration. He used to take pride in the words of the civilians, but ever since his battle with Kane, he had changed. They knew nothing. They thought that as an Uchiha he was their savior, the light that would cast away all darkness. But Sasuke knew better. If anyone was the light of Konoha, it would be Naruto. But Naruto's own light was not one that cast a ray of hope, it only led onlookers to despair and destruction. Kane though had a light that people saw hope in Indiana. Even while he faced Kane he realized how good a leader he may become. Those were Sasuke's thoughts at the moment. He grit his teeth at his own weakness, but strengthened his resolve to become stronger. Just as he was exiting his own thoughts, a voice helped him get out of them. "Sasuke," a voice yelled. Sasuke turned around to see none other than Sakura. "Sakura, what are you doing here?" Sasuke asked. Actually I was looking for you, Sasuke," Sakura spoke. Sasuke was a little surprised at this, but then he spoke. "I see, so did you need something?" "Actually, I was just wondering if maybe you wanted to go get something to eat," Sakura managed to blurt out. "Actually, I kinda already ate," Sasuke spoke but then noticed Sakura's face begin to deflate. He then spoke again, "But if you're gonna go eat, I'll come too." Sakura's eyes widened, then utter happiness came across her face. "Cool," Sakura blurted out, then covered her mouth, a blush on her face. Sasuke just sighed. Oh. Why had he said yes? Naruto sat at the table and listened to the start of the conversation between all of the shinobi at the table. The topic was how each village was in general. "Well, Konoha is pretty green. I've been to Suna a few times and it's a lot greener than there," Asuma spoke. "You got that right," Kankuro spoke. Naruto though wasn't paying attention to the conversation. "So, why re-green genin on this mission?" Kyo asked. "We're the Kazekage's 3 children," Temari answered. Naruto frowned at this, then Temari spoke again, "But it's not like we're the only genin here." All eyes turned to Naruto at the moment. It would seem that everyone had the same thought. Naruto stared back at them. "To answer your question, I am a genin, so what are you doing on this mission?" one of the Kazekage's guards inquired. Naruto frowned. "I'm here simply because the Hokage chose me to guard him." Kyo was the one that spoke to. "You must be pretty strong then." At this point, Zensuke decided to speak. "This boy is strong. I fought him firsthand." It then clicked in Kakashi's head. Naruto's scratches from before and the fact that this Zensuke kid looked pretty roughed up too. Naruto nodded. "You're pretty decent yourself." Tsunako was beginning to get angry. He then spoke. "Fight me, and perhaps a different result may occur." At this point, everyone's heads turned to Tsunako. It was Zensuke who spoke. shaking his head while he spoke. Trust me, Sanako. You cannot defeat this boy dash, but Zensuke was cut off. You don't know my true power, Zensuke, Sanako spoke. Ray cut in, calm down Sanako. If Zensuke couldn't even beat him, then why do you think that dash, Ray I need to prove to all of you that I'm not second best, Sanako spoke. Naruto decided to intervene. I have a solution. At this point, all heads turned to Naruto. I'm guessing you guys are still genin, am I right? Ray nodded. We've taken the Chunin exams twice, but were never promoted. Certain events prevented even Zensuke to become Chunin. Naruto nodded, then spoke. The Chunin exams are being held in Konoha, if I am correct. Naruto looked to Asuma and Genma for approval. They nodded, proving Naruto's statement correct. Just enter this year too. I'm sure me and my team will be there. Naruto ended by looking at Kakashi, who just smiled and spoke back. Oh, I was planning on registering you, that is if your other teammates are up for it, Kakashi spoke. Naruto nodded, and strangely it was the red-haired Suna Genin who spoke next. What is your name? The way he spoke was in a strange and dark tone. Uzumaki Naruto, and you are Gaara, am I correct? Gaara nodded. So then who are your teammates? He asked. Naruto looked to Kakashi for approval as he wasn't sure whether to reveal such information. Kakashi looked as if he thought of it, then he nodded. Naruto looked back at Gaara, then spoke, Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. At the mention of Uchiha, the others at the table began to listen more intently. I thought the Uchiha clan was wiped out. It was Kira, the female Iwa Jounin, who spoke this. Naruto shook his head. He is one of the survivors, so there are others. It was Yujito who spoke. She had been abnormally quiet for the majority of the evening, but now she spoke. That is information that I cannot reveal, Naruto spoke. Yujito frowned, but nodded. So, I assume that the copycat ninja here is your Jounin sensei. Judging by the way you looked at him for approval to talk about your team, it was the San Jounin, Baki, who spoke. He was the one that wore a veil covering one eye and a bandana. Yes, I am, Kakashi spoke, and I assume you're the Jounin sensei of the three San Genin here. Baki nodded. So why is he the only one from your team here? The Hokage requesting his services personally. It was Asuma who spoke. Wosh. His mighty flames of youth burn brighter than even his own comrades. It was Guy who yelled this. At this point, everyone at the table sweat dropped. Naruto got over it and looked at a large clock on one wall of the banquet hall. It was past 10 o'clock. Naruto smirked. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX carrying a black sack. Kane smirked, then followed the figure. If the man had a friend, then he would figure out who he was and kill him also. He followed him to the outskirts of Konoha, then the figure stopped moving. He spoke, "I know you've been tailing me for the past 20 minutes, so come out." Kane's eyes widened, but he jumped out of his tree and revealed himself. The figure dropped the sack on the ground and came face to face with Kane. The figure took in Kane, then smirked. "So Konoha sends a child after me. Do you know what I am, kid? I'm a jounin. You're outmatched." "Outmatched you say?" Kane paused, then spoke again. "We'll see what happens, 'cause I know you're gonna have to kill me now that I've seen you. You're quick to catch on." And as he said this, he drew a kunai. "I'd like to know your name, since you say I will die here." Kane spoke. The man nodded. "Ritsuko." Kane smirked. "Kane, let's go wild." XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX eyes. He was caught off guard by that type of question. I mean, you never would have gone out with me before, so what changed? Sasuke turned to Sakura. He decided to tell her the truth. That guy, Kane, has been on my mind lately. And not just him, Naruto too, Sakura sighed. Naruto, he seems to be the cause of everyone's troubles of late. Sasuke nodded. Naruto is strong. I still remember what Kakashi told me in Wave the week we were training. In this world, there are people younger than you, yet stronger than me. Sasuke quoted Kakashi words. Sakura nodded. Was he referring to Naruto? Sasuke shook his head. He wasn't referring directly to Naruto, but I'm sure Naruto came to his mind. Sakura nodded. How did Naruto get so strong though? I mean, he wasn't in the academy, and if he was, then I don't remember him. Sasuke nodded. I know the only thing I can think of is that he was trained by someone else, but who could have trained Naruto that well? Sakura asked. I've been thinking on that. It has to be the Hokage. Nobody else could have made him so strong, Sasuke answered. Sakura nodded, but then she voiced her own opinion, but his knowledge of seals is so extensive. Could the Hokage have really taught him that? Sasuke shrugged. He probably got other people to help. Like who? Sakura asked. Sasuke pondered on it for a moment, then he spoke. Maybe one of the Sannin. Sasuke spoke. Sakura nodded. If he was trained by the Hokage and the Sannin, it's no wonder he's so strong. Sakura spoke. Sasuke nodded. Sakura, it's getting pretty late. The only reason this restaurant is open is because I'm here. Sakura noticed slight sadness in Sasuke's voice. Why is that a bad thing? Sasuke answered. Nobody understands. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX ducked then tried to leg sweep Kane. Kane jumped over the leg sweep and kicked out at Ritsuko's head. Ritsuko caught Kane's foot and flipped him over his head. Kane flew over Ritsuko and before he could land Ritsuko was on him. Ritsuko appeared in front of him and punched him in the gut. His speed was too fast for Kane to dodge. Kane plummeted towards the ground and landed hard. "Arg!" Kane yelled as he hit the ground. "Foolish boy, do you now realize the difference between you and I?" Ritsuko spoke. Kane stood back up and spoke, "I'm just getting started," and as Kane said this, he closed his eyes for a moment. At this moment, he activated his Kekii Genkai Ice style, Needle Barrage. He lifted his free hand up and swung it downward. Ice needles flew down on Ritsuko. Ritsuko's eyes widened as he jumped to the left to dodge the attack. He then started with his own hand seals. Lightning style, burst. He held his right arm forward with his palm facing Kane. Lightning gathered in his palm and was released in a bullet which traveled at an incredible speed to Kane. Kane held his sword in front of him and deflected the bullet with some struggle. He then jumped back, hand seals already in motion. Wind style, Wind Dragon Jutsu. A wind dragon quickly formed and sped towards Ritsuko. Ritsuko countered. Lightning style, Lightning Dragon Jutsu. A dragon infused with lightning chakra formed behind Ritsuko and sped towards Kane. Both dragons met in between both fighters, with Kane's dragon overpowering the lightning dragon. Ritsuko's eyes widened as he saw the wind dragon speeding towards him. He ran through more seals. Lightning style, Lightning Barrier. He held up both his palms and a circular wall of electricity formed. The wind dragon impacted the shield with mighty force. Ritsuko started to skid backwards from the force. Ritsuko grit his teeth, then in one final push, he overloaded his own jutsu, but was able to deflect the wind dragon off its path. Ritsuko panted, but then saw Kane running towards him, sword in hand. Kane then blurred out of sight, reappearing right in front of Ritsuko. Kane attempted to slice him in his midsection. He moved left to dodge, then Ritsuko tried to punch Kane. Kane ducked under the punch, an ice needle forming in his free hand. This however was unnoticed by Ritsuko. In a burst of speed, Kane stabbed Ritsuko in the gut with his ice needle. "Arg!" Ritsuko yelled as Kane stabbed him. Kane allowed a smirk to cross his features, but then he noticed something. He tried to get away but it was too late. Ritsuko promptly exploded in a show of sparks and lightning. "Boom, damn, a lightning clone. Looks like I've got to bring him out." Those were Kane's thoughts as the dust cloud died down. Looking for me, Kane turned to the source of the sound. Ritsuko stood looking apathetic. He stared Kane down. Kane smirked, "You're not half bad, neither are you for a green genin, that is," Ritsuko responded. Kane smirked, "But I'm sure you realize that I haven't even gone all out yet." Ritsuko frowned at this, then spoke, "Is that right? Well then let's test your theory. Because it would seem that we've both not been giving this our all, Kane frowned. So you've been holding back too, Ritsuko smirked. There's a reason why I was given this job. I have a unique ability just as you do. What might it be? Kane asked. Let me tell you a story. During the Third Shinobi War, our village fought many battles, Ritsuko spoke. Kane nodded and Ritsuko continued. We were able to capture someone with a unique ocular jutsu, Ritsuko spoke. Kane's eyes widened. Do you mean that the Sharingan? No, not the Sharingan. Apparently it's called the Eye of Intent. Zensuk, Naruto spoke. His voice was muffled by other conversations around the table, but nonetheless, Zensuk heard him. Zensuk looked towards Naruto. Your left eye is golden but the color isn't exactly natural. I've heard that sometimes when an eye is transplanted, as Naruto spoke that last word, Zensuk's face took on a new emotion, that hereditary genes may try to convert its color. I'm guessing yours didn't exactly go as planned, Naruto ended. Zensuk let out a small laugh. You're right. My original eye color was purple, as my right eye would suggest. Naruto caught on. So then what happened to your left eye? Zensuk's emotions took on sadness. It was taken. The Eye of Intent, Kane spoke. Indeed. This eye belonged to a resident of IWA. It was transplanted into me. At this point Ritsuko removed his hood and one black eye and one purple eye with a slit was visible. My left eye, as you can see, this eye is the one that was transplanted, Ritsuko spoke. And just who did you take the eye from? Kane asked. I truly don't know. My Kage merely gave me the opportunity and I accepted, no questions asked. He walked me through a trail after the operation on how to use the eye. Let me demonstrate the power of killing intent. Ritsuko's left eye closed for a moment, then reopened on a flash. What followed was a force that Kane couldn't describe. It was an incredibly huge pressure weighing down on him and he had an urge to vomit. He went to his knees and clutched his head. Damn! Arggh! Kane yelled as Ritsuko continued to torture him. Bring me out! A voice inside Kane's head yelled. At this point, that was the only thing he could do. Kane closed his eyes. When they reopened, they were pure white with no pupil. Ritsuko's brow furrowed when he saw Kane's change. So you have an ocular jutsu also then? Kane shook his head. No, at this point, red chakra began to seep out of Kane, but what I do have, is a demon. What? Ritsuko spoke frantically. What do you mean, a demon? I mean exactly what I say, was Kane's response as the red chakra began to take the shape of a horse dog. The creature at this point had one tail. Today you die. The voice Kane used was demonic, and one that didn't belong to him. Kane then disappeared and reappeared in front of Ritsuko. His demonic chakra engulfed hand reached out and grabbed Ritsuko's head. He pulled back and threw Ritsuko away. Ritsuko flew through trees upon trees and impacted the ground with a thud. Ritsuko struggled to stand up, and was greeted to the sight of Kane on all fours stalking towards him. Ritsuko's eyes were filled with terror, but then he calmed down. He closed his left eye, then reopened it, and summoned Killing Intent. The Killing Intent filled the area, but Kane was not affected. He continued to stalk towards Ritsuko, much to his horror. Shit! Ritsuko thought, I didn't sign up for this. Kane then blurred out of sight, appearing behind Ritsuko. Ritsuko jumped into the air and began to run through hand seals. Lightning style, lightning javelin. Ritsuko formed a spear of lightning in his right hand with an arrowhead at the top. He threw it at Kane, who had jumped in pursuit. The javelin dissolved on contact with Kane's demonic chakra cloak. To Ritsuko's horror, Kane continued to speed towards him, not deterred in the slightest from his jutsu. Kane barreled into Ritsuko and sent him flying further into the air. He then reached out his arm, sending a gigantic tendril arm of chakra towards the ascending Ritsuko. Ritsuko could only watch as he was grabbed by the hand of demonic chakra. The chakra burned on his skin. Arggh! He yelled out in pain, but nobody could hear him. Then in a mighty end, the huge chakra arm slammed Ritsuko into the ground. Boom XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX myself, Zensuke responded. Naruto nodded. So you were taken captive. How did you escape? Naruto asked. I do not remember, my memory was wiped of the incident, things are still hazy, Zensuke responded. I see, and as Naruto spoke this, the Hokage began to walk towards them, the other Kages followed suit. When all 4 Kages were in front of the table, the Hokage spoke, I thank you all for your coming. Tomorrow will be the final day of this meeting. Please, I would like all of you back here at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We will sign the treaty, and you will all be witness. The various guards of each Kage nodded. Good. Then I bid you all good night, and I will see you all tomorrow, the Hokage spoke, then motioned to Yujito to be ready to leave. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Ritsuko lay in the center of it, the clothes on his back burned by the scorching demonic chakra. Kane knelt at the edge of the crater looking at the fallen Ritsuko. He walked towards Ritsuko until he stood over him. He looked at Ritsuko, mainly at his right eye. Kane wondered Haku had transplanted an eye into Zabuza a while back, and Kane had witnessed the whole process. Kane was almost completely sure he could replicate it. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX of the Hokage's room. At the moment, all he wanted to do was catch up on some sleep. He remembered what Zensuke had told him about his eye. He had a theory as to who it was that took his eye. It was the only person who seemed to be looking for Dojutsu all around, and if it truly was the Hokage, then it was possible that whomever they sent would be talented. Perhaps it was not right to trust in Kane's abilities, but he was just overthinking it. Chances were that the Hokage sent a jounin to capture Hyuga Hinata or Hyuga Hanabi. And he was sure that with the demonic chakra at Kane's disposal that he could take a jounin that had no knowledge of seals. And worst-case scenario, Kane would just have to fire a jutsu to alert others in Konoha of the kidnapper's presence. Naruto had a lot to think of. The last thing he thought before venturing into the realm of sleep was of the upcoming Chunin exams. Soon, Anbu arrived on the scene to see Kane sitting at the edge of the crater. Hyuga Hinata sat next to him. What happened here?" An Anbu spoke in a tone as if speaking an order. "Someone attempted to steal the Byakugan," Kane said. "Who are you?" another Anbu asked. "Right now I'm a citizen of Konoha under the protection of the Hokage and Uzumaki Naruto. I'm soon to be a ninja of Konoha," Kane answered. The Anbu looked at Kane. "And you dispatched this jounin all on your own?" Kane nodded. Then another Anbu spoke. "What kind of jutsu made this crater?" Kane answered without skipping a beat. "Area effect. It was fire style though, which is why the ground is scorched." The Anbu nodded. Kane's little lie had worked out. "Hyuga Hinata. Are you alright?" one of the Anbu spoke. "Hi," she said. It was then that another Anbu noticed something. "Hey kid, you're right. What's up with it?" Kane smirked. "The guy I defeated had a Dojutsu. I transplanted his eyes into mine." At this, if you could see all the Anbu's faces, you would see eyes widen in surprise. "You mean that dash?" But the Anbu was cut off. "Look at that guy. He's missing his right eye." The Anbu looked at the corpse of Ritsuko and sure enough, his right eye was gone. "Your right eye is purple with a slit. Is that how it looked on this man?" The Anbu was actually concerned. There were so many things that could have gone wrong. "Hi, I'm not as unskilled as I look," Kane spoke, then stood up. He began to walk away from the scene. "I'll be heading back into Konoha now. I'm sure the Hokage will call for me pretty soon," and at this, he blurred away into the night. Hyuga Hinata had watched the boy leave, and there was only one thought on her mind. This new boy was an enigma. He was strong enough to defeat whoever tried to capture her, and he obviously was some kind of medic ninja at some time. But Hinata had never gotten his name. That was her new goal. to find out who exactly her black-haired savior was. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX hooded figure nodded. It was foolish of the Hokage to try a stunt like that, but still a kid defeating that Jounin, the first voice spoke. The first voice had some sort of plant-like object around his hood. His face was still covered by shadows. Zetsu, have you been keeping an eye on the boy? The taller of the figures asked. The plant figure, now identified as Zetsu, replied, he's in Kumo at the moment, of course. The Kage conference that the Hokage called is still into effect. It will end tomorrow. The other hooded figure nodded. As he began to life off his hood, an orange mask with a spiral pattern became visible. It had one eye hole. Good. Watch and report back to me the outcome of tomorrow's activities. It would seem we have a visitor, Zetsu, the hooded figure spoke. The masked figure turned to look behind him. Zetsu looked around the masked figure to find another hooded figure. I'm sorry to intrude, but it would seem fate is moving faster than I would have expected, the new arrival said. The masked figure nodded. Yes, our enemies move quicker and grow stronger. The new hooded figure nodded. Yes, but I come bearing news. Orochimaru is planning an attack on the hidden leaf. If you could see under the masked man's face, you would have seen a sinister smile come across it. This works in our favor, the masked man said. There is one more thing I need to discuss with you, the new hooded figure spoke. Speak, the masked man said. It's about Uzumaki Naruto. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Foxsage, and I'm signing off.